Hey everybody, welcome to this week's video. This week's Torah portion is Toldot. And I'm talking to you from London, England, where I am visiting with my mother and her husband, Moshe Mendel Feldman, having a great time, and also celebrating the wedding of two of our very special alumni, Hannah Slager and Gidi Abraham. May God grant them many, many, many long, happy years together with Shalom V'Shalva, peace and tranquility and beautiful family. Mazel tov on the wedding this Sunday. Very excited for them. And talking about weddings, this week's Parsha has the wedding. Well, not really the wedding, but the children of Yitzchak and Rivka. The wedding was last week's Parsha. Yitzchak and Rivka, our patriarch and matriarch, have two sons, twins, Yaakov and Esav. Everyone knows Yaakov is the diligent scholar, sits in the tent, and Esav is the hunter, and the one who our rabbis don't have a very favorable view of. And in fact, the Torah itself tells us about the wives that, many wives that Esav took, who were really troublesome, bothersome to his parents, Yitzchak and Rivka. Unlike our bride and groom, who are the most amazing people around. But Esav didn't have such good taste like was befitting the son of Yitzchak and Rivka. Nonetheless, we find that Yitzchak wants to give Esav this big, big blessing. And he calls him in and says, go bring me some game, bring me some venison. I'm going to give you this wonderful blessing. And he does. And we know the story that Rivka intercepts the blessing and makes sure that Yaakov gets it instead. The question that begs to be asked is, what on earth was Yitzchak thinking? Did he know that Esav is a hunter and a cunning person, someone who is up to no good? According to especially when you read according to the sages, he was a rapist, a murderer, terrible guy. What is he giving blessings for? He should have given him some good discipline. And I want to share with you an insight from the Hasidic masters I think is very insightful and important. What the difference of view, the worldview of Yitzchak and Rivka. And sometimes we have two different views, and sometimes we need to be able to acknowledge the view of another person. And sometimes the other person has to figure out a way to get whatever they need accomplished in the right way. I don't want to get into how Rivka did it, if I would recommend that couples engage in this kind of behavior where we intercept our spouse's decision-making process, but leaving that aside, we'll leave that for the marriage therapist to get into. But there are different ways of seeing the world. There are different personalities and different ideas that we come with. And Yitzchak clearly had a different view, a different idea than his wife Rivka. Yitzchak understood Esav is a man of the field. Esav is a hunter. Yaakov is the spiritual type. He's the introvert. Yaakov is the one that sits and studies all day long. What's the point of giving him these type of blessings? Let's look at those blessings for a moment. The blessing is two verses in the parsha. May God grant you the dew of the heaven, the fat of the land, an abundance of grain and wine. May people serve you and nations bow down to you. Yitzchak is going to give that to Yaakov. Yaakov is sitting studying Torah all day long. What does he need? Dew and grain and fat of the land. He's going to give that to Esau. He's going to give that to Esau. Esau, it's going to transform Esau. And then Esau is going to use that in support of Yaakov. This is how the Hasidic masters explain it. Divide the two. Esau is the man of the field. Give him the grain and the wine. Yaakov, he'll get the spiritual blessings of Abraham. He'll get the spiritual heir. He'll be the spiritual heir to the legacy of Abraham and Sarah. He doesn't need the grain and the wine. Esau can support him. Rivka has a different view. This is absolutely not. Esau will corrupt the grain and the wine, the dew of the heaven, the fat of the land. We need someone who has the divine wisdom that is connected to the divine mission. Get those material blessings in order to channel them and use them in the correct way. Yaakov needs both. These are not two separate worlds. The material and the spiritual need to be fused together to become one. That is the purpose of the Torah. That is the purpose of the Jew in the world. That, as we say in Hasidus, there's an aphorism that the Jew takes the material and turns it into something spiritual. We don't live in two worlds. We live in one world that is fused together, where the material becomes spiritual, where we imbue our physical lives, our material, our homes with a sense of spirituality, with godliness, with Torah. That's the job of Yaakov. Yaakov, who becomes Yisrael. Yisrael is the Sar, the prince. He rules over everything. He rules over the world. He's the master of the world, the master of the material, the master of his physical life. That is what Rivka saw. And indeed, Yitzchak concedes that the blessing goes to Yaakov. And then he blesses him later with the blessing of Avram, of the Abrahamic legacy and tradition. That is my message to our bride and groom who are celebrating their wedding on Sunday. Their home be filled with material wealth that inspires their spiritual life, and their spiritual life should elevate that material wealth. With that, I wish you a good Shabbos.